You know, this is going to be the first time I actually get to use the gavel.
I know.
Do really hard then, right?
That's right.
Make it count.
Like, that is really,
Use it.
That is actually pretty exciting.
Wait till you get a virtual gavel for your.
Yep.
They have them on our phones.
Probably. You can probably download an app.
Yeah. Let's go with that.
Because how did they get recorded?
okay, now I have 6 o'clock. Are we live? Yes.
We just went by.
Oh, okay.
Got a few people joining. A lot of people in the waiting room. so
Okay.
everyone is first.
Make sure I don't have food in my face. Dress me up. You just can't take me no place.
I know.
We ready?
I think we're good.
All right, then. Woo-hoo, I get to use the gavel. There we go. There's a kind of a sound without breaking it. To call this meeting to order so the May meeting of our Triangle J Board of Delegates. Welcome, everyone. We have a few folks in the room and a lot of folks virtual. So we are live streaming. I won't go through the charge, but know that everyone always treats everyone respectfully and handles themselves like normal adults. So anyhow, Chantel, if you can assist us with the roll call vote and confirm if we have quorum.
All right, so good evening, everyone. I will say the county name and just let me know that people are here. I will go at the very end and kind of just check to make sure if I've missed anyone. So please feel free to let me know who are here for attendance. All right. Aberdeen,
Will Mulaney present.
thank you. Anger. Apex.
Brett Gantz here in person.
Thank you. Good to see you in person. Archer Lodge. Benson.
Here, Jerry Medlin.
Thank you. Broadway.
Thomas Beal here.
Thank you. Cameron. Carborough. Carthage. Cary. Chapel Hill. Chatham County.
Mike Dasher, present.
Alrighty. Clayton.
Jason Thompson, present.
City of Durham. Durham County. Fuquay Arena. Garner. Golston. Hillsborough.
Hillsborough, Kathleen Ferguson, present.
Thank you, Chair. Holly Springs. Johnson County. Kinley. Nightdale. Lee County,
Kirk Smith here.
Micro. Moore County. Mooresville. Orange County. Pine Level.
I know that James Zetta for Orange County is on the
I'm
line.
here. Sorry, I missed it. I'm here. James Zetta, Bedford.
Thank you. All right, Pine Level. Pinehurst.
Pinehurst, Jeff Morgan present.
Thank you. Pittsburgh. Princeton.
Princeton here and present.
Raleigh. Robbins. Roseville. Sanford. Selma.
Amy West Whitley here.
Okay, thank you.
And Bill Haggis from Siler City is here.
Thank you.
Mark Wilson, Archer Lodge is here.
Thank you. Smithfield. Seven Pines. Bass. White County.
Susan Evans for White County is here.
Thank you. Wake Forest.
Here.
Thank you. Wendell.
Joe Deloach, Wendell, I'm here.
Thank you. Wilson's Mills.
David McGowan, Wilson's Mills is here.
Thank you. Zebulon. Is there anyone that I may have missed? Okay, we do have.
You do have quorum, fantastic. All right, I'm assuming that everyone has taken a look at the agenda. And are there any changes? Anyone on the phone want any changes? I can't tell. All right, then we have an agenda. And from there, we're really pleased to recognize Shuchi Gupta for the 2022 Rosa Parks Diversity Leadership Award, which is an amazing award and honor. And so Lee, if you would take it away, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the board, both in person and virtual. It's nice to see you and to see you on the screen as well. I don't think Shuchi is able to be with us tonight. Shuchi, if you're on, if you'll say hi. But we did want to recognize and let the board know about this great recognition that Shuchi was awarded. Just a few weeks ago, I had the honor to attend the gala, which was held at the Raleigh Union Station, where they honored Shuchi with this award. She was nominated by her supervisor, Sean Flaherty, and for good reason. A lot of the information is in your agenda, but specifically, Shuchi took it upon herself to recognize that one of our largest programs, which is our Transportation Demand Management Program, it's over $1 million a year. Because of the complexity of the award, a lot of the regulatory hoops that local governments and other organizations have to get through, that we really lacked interest from small organizations, and particularly organizations that may reach individuals that don't have ready access to transportation and And we just weren't very diverse, quite frankly, in some of the applicants that we were getting. So Shuchi took it upon herself with the committee to arrange a separate grant process for smaller organizations and to make the application easier. Still strict requirements in terms of performance, but just to make the access easier, and got tremendous response from that. And for that reason, she was nominated and her peers recognized her. And it was a wonderful event. She was very honored and a bit shy about getting the award. If you know Shuchi, she's very humble, has a servant sort of heart about her. And so we're just really thrilled. It's just another example of the great work that our staff are doing across the region. So just wanted to say thank you for the great work, Shuchi, and make sure we lifted that up to the board. So thank you.
Thank you and congratulations. It's just amazing. I love it when our staff is honored for the work that they do day in and day out. And I really appreciate, as this board appreciates the initiative, the creativity and innovation that everyone brings. So with that, we'll move on to our business and the status of the Emergency Supplemental Historic Preservation Fund grant awards for Johnston, Lee, and Moore counties. And Lindsay, can you take that away?
Yeah, so if mute myself. Okay, sorry. Can everyone hear me then? Okay. I'm in person. This is my first time. I was like, what do I do? Where do I look? But yeah, good evening. I'm going to present. I'm Lindsay Whitson, the Community and Economic Development Program Manager, and I'm going to be providing an update on 3 of the Emergency Supplemental Historic Preservation Fund grants that we wrote back in July, August of 2020. So it's been quite some time, and we're now just starting to go to the procurement phases and things like that. But I just wanted to provide an update tonight. Thank you. This map is kind of hard to see at the bottom, but again, this program was originally, it's National Park Service dollars that's passed through the North Carolina State Historic Preservation Office. So it is federal funding passed through the state. And these dollars were used to provide recovery assistance to historic resources that experienced damage as a result of Hurricane Florence and/or Michael. All eligible resources have to be on the National Register of Historic Places or eligible applicants. And the map is just showing in blue the different counties that were eligible for these types of funding, for this type of funding. We didn't write the one that's in orange in Durham County, but overall there were 5 funded in our region. And it's a 3-year, they have 3 years to close out the project. So the contracts were actually signed in January of this year, and they have until the end of December 2024 to next slide. So this is the timeline. Again, grant writing was back in July and August of 2020. We'll be administering the grants for all 3 projects. Lee County is one grantee on behalf of the historic Lee County Courthouse, and then TESS of NC, which is a nonprofit located in Johnston County. They own the Princeton Graded School, which is a former Rosenwald school. Will be administering their award as well. And then the Adder Community Center, which is located in Adder in Moore County. But part of the reason it's taken so long for us to get to the contract signing in January of this year was the NEPA process, the National Environmental Policy Act, and the Section 6 clearance process took much longer than the state anticipated. So again, these were awarded back in October of 2020, and we're just now starting the design procurement process. So all 3 requests for proposals for the design phase are in review, and they have to go to the state next for review before we can then distribute. So after that, obviously the design would then take place with the selected consultants, which will probably take until the end of the year. And then we go out for the construction request for proposals. And of course, all 3 projects have to remain in compliance with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. So the design and construction consultants selected have to have those specific skill sets to complete these types of projects. Next slide, please. So these are the 3 grants again that I was speaking about: the historic Lee County Courthouse, the Princeton Graded School, and then the Adder Community Center. Historic Lee County Courthouse is the only one of the 3 that's currently in operation. I mean, right now it houses some of their staff. Their capital court cases are held upstairs. It's in much better form than the other 2 buildings, which are uninhabitable, have not been operational, I think, for like at least over 10 years. And so they were actually, all 3 of these were the 3 highest awarded in the state. And the Lee County Courthouse was around $874,000. This program was really interesting because the match requirement was so minimal. So that's why you can see Lee County had to only contribute around $53,000. And the types of projects that they're focusing on with this building is obviously the design phase, but they need a new roof. So the roof was going to replace, which will be the majority of that expense, as well as waterproofing and perimeter damage to keep water out of the building, which they have a lot of issues with that currently. Window replacement, and then replacement of the entry doors and making them ADA compliant. Of course, these were all estimates from a while ago, so there will definitely be value engineering have to be performed to complete these projects. The second one is the Princeton Graded School, and I do have a couple of pictures to show on the next couple slides, but they were awarded almost $1 million with a very small match as well, around $57,000. Similar projects, you know, design, waterproof coating to the existing roof. They don't need a brand new one because it's actually a decent form. Restoring windows, flooring within, and, you know, repainting, drywall, HVAC, electrical, etc. Adder Community Center is very similar to Princeton Graded School, not operational right now. Received around $760,000 with a small match of $5,000, which is not much. And then to do a lot of the similar type projects, design, roof replacement, waterproofing, window replacement, and so on. But all 3 of these are very huge assets in their communities. So especially bringing like these buildings back up to operational status is very important, as well as just maintaining their integrity to withstand future hurricanes or high intensity storms. So next slide, please.
Do we have a plans that once they're complete that we can get the photos so that we can have and preserve the before and afters?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think that's important.
Yeah, and I mean, we're required to anyways under the grant to have before and after.
Okay.
We had to submit before photos, and we'll have to take after photos as well. So
is that something we can put on the website so that folks can see?
Yeah, I think the state just has to approve the final photos before we can publicize them. So yeah. Next slide. And just as our administrator, obviously we take off a lot of the burden from the grantee, you know, Lee County and the 2 nonprofits that we're supporting. So helping with the RFQ, the request for proposal process, and then the request for qualifications process and the request for proposal process with the construction phase, documentation of procurement requirements and documentation of the budget throughout the entire process, submitting for reimbursement requests, and having a very active relationship with the state and having timely reporting and things like that. Really just helping to oversee the project to completion. Next slide, please. So this is the Adder Community Center. The pictures on the left are kind of blurry. They're from a while ago, but you can see like the bottom left is a former library within. And then the 2 photos on the right, you can see the roof is caving in, the windows are busted out, and obviously the siding needs repaired. And next slide. This is the Lee County Courthouse. The pictures on the right, just a part of the roof up top. that obviously needs to be replaced. And then the bottom right is water. You can see there's water damage in their basement down there. And I've been on all of these sites. I went on the roof and it was scary, but I did. Next slide, please. And then this is this is the Princeton graded school. It doesn't look like as bad on the pictures on the bottom left, but it's very vandalized and a lot of the windows are broken out and things like that. But you can see the right pictures. The bottom right is the auditorium, years and years ago. And then the top right, it's hard to see, but it's now where, again, like a lot of the windows are busted out. But the cool thing with this building is a lot of the historical, like flooring and windows are still there. And some of them are, and like I said, the roof is actually in really good shape. So the historical folks tell me. So they're just really neat buildings, all of them. I think that might be, I just wanted to put in a plug. There are a lot of other historical related grant funding projects through the National Park Service. And over the past years, they haven't received enough applications. So there's this underrepresented communities program, and there's a history of equal rights program, and then an African-American civil rights. And those are all coming up in the near future, and they're not requiring a match this year. So I just wanted to say, if anyone wanted other information about that, I could share what I know. I just know that they specifically have not received enough applications in the past. So
if you could share that with all the delegates, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's my last slide. And happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Lindsay?
No, I do want to comment. The Johnston County Historical Commission will be putting a historic marker at the Princeton Graded School on June 19th. You'll get an invitation for that. But just a short comment on Rosenwald schools. They were built throughout the South around between 1900 and 1920. They were funded through the Rosenwald family, which was one of the founders of Sears and Roebuck. And obviously African Americans was the focus because a lot of them had poor facilities for education. So they get grants to build these schools, and very few are left in North Carolina.
Yeah.
We renovated the W.B. Baker School in Sanford. It's now a middle school. Excuse me. Incorporated the old portion of it.
Very cool. Any questions or further comments?
Thank you for your hard work.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's been fun. Like I said, I'm gonna go out to all the buildings and it's been a good experience. So.
I'm really looking forward to seeing the changes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so very much. And for now, we will go to the main feature, our budget. Lee will take it away. As you know that we were first gotten the preview before the 15th of April, and here we are. So, Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a real quick comment about the previous item. It's a great example, again, of the good work of our staff. And when there's really great cooperation between our local government members and staff here at the COG, there's really cool things that can happen. And I'm really proud of the capacity that we're building and the capabilities that we're building around being able to write grants for local government members, for community partners, partnering with local government members. It really helps bring in funds, and we're able to do some great projects for the region. So congratulations to our staff for another great piece of work. So talking about bringing money in and our work plan and budget for next year, it is time to consider adoption of the budget for next fiscal year 22-23. I will do a abbreviated version of the budget presentation I did before the executive committee. And then we'll need to have the required public hearing. And then I would ask the Board of Delegates to consider adoption of the budget resolution, which is included in your packet. So next slide. Unfortunately, we had to change the process up a little bit this year because the Board of Delegates needed to cancel their April meeting. We generally would present the budget to the full board in April and then come back and do the public hearing. And we would do the public hearing in April. Then we would come back in May and ask the board to consider adoption. Because the full board was canceled, we convened a special meeting of the executive committee on May the 4th, presented the budget at that time, and the executive committee voted to recommend adoption of the budget to the full board. On the 10th and 12th, met with TJCOG officers to discuss the budget. And then tonight, your primary purpose is to hold the required public hearing and to consider whether you would like to adopt the budget or not. Next slide. So we have modified the budget a little bit based on some changes in benefits and some additional dollars that we know now we are going to get. So our modified recommended budget is about 34.5 million. That is a significant increase from last year. But I will say, and I'm not sure, I don't think it made it on this slide. A majority of that increase is because of one project. $10 million of this is for the Wake County ARP project that we're doing on behalf of Wake County. So if you back that out, then you're looking at 24.5, which is still a significant increase over 18, but not quite an 89 or 87% increase. So a lot of that is one single project that we'll do next year and then it'll go away. Next slide. I just said that. So I'd forgotten that I had to put that in there. So next slide. So let's talk about member assessment or member dues. Thank you to each of our local government members that pays their dues to be part of the organization. And we're very proud that our dues have remained steady. Maybe for too long, I would say, but we continue to keep them steady because we're able to bring in additional work. We're very lean with respect to administrative staff and other functions, but the dues remain unchanged at 39 cents per capita, up to 150,000 population. And then for those jurisdictions that have over 150, the dues actually drop, which is also unique for a COG, I would say. They drop to 20 cents per capita. I also will say that the counties only pay on the unincorporated portion of their population because the counties bear the cost of the administrative needs for the area agency on aging. So the counties pay into the AAA. That's why they don't pay the full freight on the regular dues side. So again, no changes. Dues have remained unchanged since 1996-97. And again, it's because of the great work of staff. It's the addition of 9 local government members since 2017. We're very excited that we're looking at possibly adding 2 additional members in the next few months. And that means we'll only have 3 local governments that are not members of the COG. And so I think a really achievable goal for the next year or 2 is to get to 100% membership. We had to build another shelf here for all the new plaques. And I've got the last 2 sort of hanging off the edge. I scooted everything together and put them up there a few weeks ago. So anyways, next slide. So, the member dues, we are very appreciative of. And although you look at the budget and they only make up 5 or 6%, they are the most critical piece of the budget. And without the member dues, the house of cards falls. And y'all get tired of this, I know, but our funding structures, I don't know any other way to say it, but like an inverse pyramid. And the member dues are the smallest amount. But if they're not there, nothing else can happen. And the reason why is because several of our projects, a lot of our transportation work requires a match. So we have to put 20% of local dues into the transportation work that we do. It's the only place we can pull from for our contingency for the year. And it pays a portion of a great number of COG staff. It doesn't pay 100% of any one staff member, but it does fill the gaps between staff members that maybe have 90% project funding and just need 10% to fill it out. Or it fills our leadership team to give them the time to lead and to supervise and to look for new opportunities. And so a lot of our grants are so restrictive that a staff member can't go do something else if they're funded 30% with this specific grant. So the member dues are absolutely critical for that reason. Next slide. Here are some organizational principles that are reflected in the budget, part of our recommended strategic plan as well. So I always like to highlight how we are working on these. Serving our local government members. The budget continues. Everything we do is a service to our local government members in some way. If we can't connect it directly or indirectly to serving our local governments, we shouldn't be doing it. So some examples of some things that we're going to be doing. Working more and more around data and analytics. We are the regional data center. We're designated as that by the state, trying to increase our capacity in that way and using data to do all sorts of other things as well. And then diversity, equity, and inclusion. It recommends an increase in funding for existing position. We have a position that is funded mostly with transportation, but that individual also works 10% to do some of our work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we also are including this year an allocation of funding to do some equity measures for our programs, which is a priority for the organization. Next slide. We anticipate if the board were to adopt the strategic plan tonight that we will add 2 additional organizational principles. And if that happens, we'll be working on identifying ways and pulling out ways we're already doing things like service alignment. And that means making sure that if we're doing something in housing and there's a good connection to our transportation work, that folks are working together. Aging issues cross all the other focus areas, right? Making sure that we're not in silos, that we're working together. And then thought leadership. I think our members, our board have made it very clear that they want to see the COG advance itself in thought leadership across the region. So one example is we've been talking a lot about a regional vision around transportation, housing, and land use for the entire region and how we are all tied together. That's a good example of something that we're trying to do. Recognizing that there's local control, but we are a region and we are interdependent. So providing that thought leadership around certain issues of importance. Next slide. So here are our strategic focus areas. We will begin alignment with the strategic plan, again, assuming that the board adopts that tonight. And I went ahead and changed the titles of the focus areas to align with the strategic plan recommendations. Most of them are the same. Aging and human services is the same as it's been. Community and economic development, housing, mobility and transportation. Our natural resources and resiliency is planned to be renamed environment, and resiliency to be more inclusive of all the different things that they are working on. And then our technical assistance and strategy and innovation are being merged together for it to be called member support and strategy. And this is where we do all the work to support our members around anything that doesn't fit in the other focus areas, and also our strategy and innovation. Next slide. Real quickly around new or reclassified positions, the budget does anticipate some growth with positions. It anticipates the addition through reclassification of an assistant executive director. This has been a goal of mine for several years. I know the officers know this specifically, and we have talked about this. We have grown to a point where I am way too involved in internal operations, and I've got to get more focused on external things. And we are large enough that we need somebody to basically run internal operations for the organization. We may get close to 50 employees as of next year. A chief finance officer. This is actually a very unique opportunity to partner with the Mid-Carolina COG to merge our finance operations and to do it jointly, to leverage each other's strengths and to really actually provide a higher level of service at a more efficient cost. We will actually have a CFO with a CPA, which we're really excited about. Communications coordinator to do some of the work that Elena originally did when she got with the COG, came to the COG, and now she's doing much more member engagement. So we need something just around somebody to do basic communications. Next slide. We have 3 management analysts included in the budget. These are all connected to specific appropriations from the North Carolina General Assembly, which we're very appreciative of. The first is around American Rescue Plan. That individual will help with grant writing assistance, with American Rescue Plan issues for our local governments. The second analyst, we have heard a lot around the challenges around recruiting and retaining employees, and we're going to use some of our ARP money to assist local governments to think about how they can work more closely together on recruiting and retaining as a region to provide better efficiencies, but also to be more effective. And then we got a separate appropriation around disaster recovery to help our local governments coordinate more effectively around disaster recovery issues. A Planner 1, which is a direct result of a US EDA grant to assist Alamance and Chatham counties with some planning around the Haw River to leverage the economic development opportunities for that wonderful resource. Next slide. And then the next 2 are really a result of the reorganization of the Transportation Department and the promotion of Matt Day to Transportation Director. The Planner 2 is a vacant position that we were waiting to do the reorganization, and we're going to be basically rehiring that to support the TDM program. The Senior Planner will take over Matt's responsibilities for TARPO, or the Triangle Area Rural Transportation Planning Organization. Those funds were already in this year's budget, and we have already made a hire or an offer for that position. Somebody who is a transportation planner in another region. We're sorry to steal, but she's excellent, and we're happy to have her. She'll be starting
June 13th.
Starting June 13th. So, and then 2 part-time aging specialists in our area agency on aging. So next slide. Those are our new positions or reclassified. Real quickly on salary and benefits. This budget recommends 2 separate increases for employees. One is the market adjustment, recognizing inflation and the market, that things are getting really competitive and we want to keep our talented staff here. So this would be an across the board 5% increase for all Triangle J staff members. We also have included a 3%. The other thing about the market adjustment, we are scheduled to do our salary study next fiscal year as directed by the board. The board has directed us to do a salary study at least every 4 years. And we had the budget flexibility this year to go ahead and do 5% and to move the minimums up. We hope that will ease any impacts from the salary study that we'll do next year. Yes, sir.
We've been dealing with the same situation with making the salaries income or hourly wages. Do you have hourly wage? transfers?
Do we have any hourly wage
Yes,
employees?
we do.
Are you minimizing it $15?
So we have, there would be above 15. They're like, have a higher salary is broken down by hourly. So yeah, we don't have like, but that did come up at a recent HR meeting. I convened all the directors in the region, and a lot of them were considering and crowdsourcing to raise that for like their seasonal employees and whatnot.
Yeah.
We don't really have that.
We don't have a lot of,
Yeah.
maybe seasonal and so all of our employees on our schedule are above that 15.
Yeah.
Based on the nature of work. And that, Commissioner Smith, that question I think came up a couple of years ago during the budget discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually did some work on that to make sure that we were above that $15 threshold at that time. That's a great question. The second is a merit of 3%, and that'll be for any employee eligible for merit. That's if they're not in probation. If you're in probation, if you successfully complete probation, you get a 5% increase for completing probation. So really probation is treated differently, right? Because they're a new employer, they've been newly promoted. And they need to, of course, be in a position for at least a year, and they need to meet expectations for our performance evaluation process. The only other major issue was we did receive a 20% increase for health insurance. But luckily we were able to negotiate, well, not we, it was Jenny and our broker were able to negotiate that down to 0%. So that certainly changed the numbers quite a bit. We all know and dealt with health insurance. Who knows what will happen next year, but at least this year it was 0%. We were out to bid, and I think seeing the pressure of some fairly competitive bids got the League of Municipalities to come off their 20%. So we're happy with the league. We'd like to stay with the league, and we were happy to see the 0%. Those are the
skills.
You can start hiring our negotiations.
All right, it wasn't
Call
Jenny.
me when you need.
Need to negotiate a car. All right, next slide. Lastly, indirect expenses for board members that may be new. And we don't have a lot of time, and I'll be happy anytime you have a question to go into more detail. But the way we have to operate, because we have so many programs that are discretely funded by a grant that has to stay separated from everything else, we have to actually pool all of our administrative costs, the cost of this building, the cost of the indirect, the cost of the IT, cost of finance, attorneys. A lot of my salary is in an admin pot. And then that is spread evenly across every program so that all programs are paying their fair share of the overhead. So it's a simple math problem. If we have a lot of expense on the admin side and not a lot of money coming in for programs, there's a higher percentage that everybody has to share. So the thing that this indicates to me is we've been able to maintain costs relatively well on the admin side, but really more importantly, we have expanded our services and we have brought in more staff members. It's calculated based on salary and fringe. So local governments have asked us to do more work. We've been able to hire more staff. We've been able to lower the indirect rate. So a program that was here 7 years ago has a 20% basically discount on their indirect costs that they had 5 or 6 years ago. So they can push that money into direct service. So that's really important. And I'm very proud of staff for working hard to get this rate down. I don't know if we're going to be able to continue this. So I hate showing this because I anticipate next year it probably will go up based on some things that I know are going to happen. But that's a pretty good record. So kudos to staff for that. Next slide. And lastly, contingency is budgeted at $55,000. That's a fairly good increase from last year. Still not as high as I want it to be, but we'll make it work. I'm also budgeting $20,000 With the anticipated adoption of the strategic plan, I think now is the time to do a rebranding effort for the organization. And so budgeting that, we don't know what it will cost, but just getting enough money in there so that we can do a good job with that. I believe that is all.
Can you remind the delegates what the percentage of fund balance is, our reserves?
So we are required, our fund balance policy is to maintain, we don't do a percentage because we're a little different than a municipality or a county. The way we've done our policy is that we maintain enough unassigned fund balance to maintain operations for at least 2 months if money just got cut off. All money got cut off. And I think at the last audit, we were like at 2.5 months. So very pleased with that. We're doing good with fund balance. We could always build it, but we're in pretty good shape. Is that it on slides?
Yeah.
All right. Happy to answer any questions. Madam Chair, you may turn it over to you. And if you want to open the public hearing, that's up to your discretion as well.
Yes, first I will entertain any questions. Anyone on the phone, on Zoom?
Yes, this is Jane Hogeman from Pinehurst, and I had a question.
Yes, please.
Thank you. The ARP management analyst, who's going to help with grant writing assistance, my understanding, and I may have it wrong, but my understanding was that the first $10 million that any local government receives, you don't have to account for. So what is it that they're helping with? Are there
Yes, ma'am. That's a very good observation. So the rules have changed where the direct allocation, $10 million of it, basically can be used. If you can do revenue replacement, it can be used in any way that you could normally use general fund dollars. So that does lessen some opportunities, maybe for direct assistance around our local governments with that portion. But there's a lot of other money that has come into the federal and to the state around ARP that is beginning to come out. There's a ton of water and sewer money. There are broadband opportunities. There's also a lot of our local governments that are struggling with doing the reporting for the funding. So that staff will be doing that as well. So you're right, there's probably not as much opportunity with that specific tranche of money, but there's a lot more money floating around at the state and the federal level that we'll be able to, we've gotten specific requests from local governments and we'll be able to help them around grant writing, administration, and record keeping.
I see. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for the question.
Any other questions? Hearing none, then I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved. Mark Wilson.
Okay, so I have, Mark, I hear Mark has put forth the motion and seconded by Mr. Raines. Any further discussion? And do we need to do a roll call vote?
I think it's your prerogative.
Oh,
Mr. Chair.
hallelujah. Then I hold on. Declare the public hearing open. Do we have any comments from the public that has been received? And do we have anyone on the line from the public who wishes to comment or put forth questions? Any that you're aware of? All right.
Before you close the public hearing, I think you put a great budget together. I know that it's exhausting to grow your program almost double and to make sure you're in budget and in the year to make sure you're still in budget. So thank you for making our organization more in tune with what's going on in our COG and in expanding the services.
Thank you. I echo that. It's in a pandemic, it's been interesting, and I continue to be impressed with the creativity and the innovation and the attention and service to our member governments, regardless of size. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Hearing no comments, I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All right, so the motion's put forth by Kurt and seconded by Brett. Any further discussions? Anything or anyone on the phone? With that, then I declare, I love this, the public hearing closed. And from there, we now are going to move on to our strategic plan. And is Dr. Allen on?
And I'm happy to introduce her.
Okay, fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, so Jenny and Lee, if you would please have the honors.
I'll turn it over to Jenny here really quickly. The only thing I'll say is this organization that we know of has never had a strategic plan. So we're really excited about doing this. Any organization that's not thinking strategically about its future, I think there's, I don't want to say something wrong, but there's something missing. And so it's been very enjoyable to engage and to think about the long-term strategy for the organization. And so Jenny and Monica have done the heavy lifting on this. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenny to say anything and to introduce our fantastic facilitator, Monica Allen.
Thank you, Lee. Welcome, Monica. So for the past several months, many of you on this call have been very closely involved with this process. But we have been partnering with Monica Allen, Dr. Monica Allen, who is the principal of Insight Performance Management Group. She is out of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg County area. And we started this process sometime in the fall and really ramped up around the holidays and have been working closely together for several months. So she is actually going to kind of walk you through the timeline and then present out our final proposal tonight for the framework. So Monica.
Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Chair Ferguson, Lee, and Jenny, thank you for allowing me to be here tonight. And also want to just greet the Triangle J Board of Delegates, I believe, and special guests and staff. So I'm Monica Allen, as Jenny has introduced me, and I'm the principal of Insight Performance Management Group. We are a small boutique consulting firm here in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. And I've had the pleasure over the last, I guess now at this point, almost 6 months, working with Lee and Jenny and others to help develop a strategic framework. So really my goal here tonight is to just share with you the process that we use to develop what was presented to you in your advance packet. And then just to do some highlights of the strategic framework. So I'll just go ahead and jump right in. So with planning, strategic planning, we took basically a two-phased approach, if you will, or a two-step approach to strategic planning, with the last step in the strategic planning effort being post-planning work, and I'll talk about that in a second. But you can see on this slide here that from November to December of 2021, we conducted what's called an environmental scan. And essentially what that meant was just kind of taking a look at what's going on within the external environment, other things that may affect the day-to-day business of the COG, as well as kind of the future and direction of the organization. So that environmental scan was pretty comprehensive. I know I provided a full comprehensive report, so I'm not going to go into detail, but essentially what we did is we did some employee engagement. We did a survey with the employees with the COG. There were about 21 individuals that responded. We did have the majority of the individuals be with the organization, I believe less than, I think 3 years, followed by the next largest group of employees in that 5 to 10 year range. And so as part of the feedback that we received from employees, we did get a lot of good insight from those employees that are relatively new to the organization, as well as those employees that have been there for some time. And we asked those employees to provide feedback on the current mission vision of the organization, the organizational priorities, as well as the current focus areas. So we got a lot of good feedback from employees. They were very open and honest. And that was one of the main data points that we used to set the strategic framework. Also held several focus groups with what I would call stakeholders and partners. So met with the TJ COG officers, city, county, town managers, whomever had interest in chatting with us about what they wanted to see as part of the strategic framework, talked to several regional partners, as well as I met with the Aging and Human Services group. All in all, we had about 20 individuals, 16 participated via focus groups, 3 participated via survey, and then I had one call with an individual that couldn't get into a focus group or complete the survey. We also engaged peer council of governments from across the nation. There were 3 that came and did essentially, we did interviews, and then we also had them speak to the committee with regards to just sharing some of the things that they were facing. So we met with the Atlanta Regional Council, Bay Area Metro COG, and the Mid-Ohio Planning Commission. And so they were able to give us a lot of great insight as to what they were doing with regards to best or good practices. And then the other thing that we considered as part of the environmental scan was what I would call document review. And that was just to check in with those guidance documents that the COG leaders use and produce. So looked at the charter, looked at the revised values, the annual report from 18 and 19, the adopted or approved budget from FY21 to FY22, and then also took a look at the area plan for aging and human services in that 2024 plan. So there was a lot going on in November, December. We did bleed it a little bit into January, but from there, we essentially met with the steering committee, just shared with them that full comprehensive report. Then we had the board retreat. Many of you had attended and provided a lot of good feedback for us to consider. Went back to the steering committee with a strategic framework. So that was kind of our start point, got their reactions and feedback. And then, of course, the revised the strategic framework in April. And then it was kind of like a phase 2 to planning. So in May, actually prepared for the meeting tonight. And again, you have the full strategic framework in front of you, so you can refer to that. And then assuming approval by the Board of Delegates after tonight, we'll go into what I call post-planning, which is essentially creating the meat of the plan that would fall under Lee's leadership. So that would be things around identifying those program areas, specific 3 to 5 year goals, strategies, and then key performance indicators to help us understand how successful the COG will be with this strategic plan. So a lot going on again since November, but I definitely feel like the strategic framework is well informed. Like I said, we got a lot of good feedback. And so go to the next slide and I'll just go over a couple of things that were shared with you as part of your advanced package. So next slide. So just starting with the mission statement. So as I had mentioned, we had asked for feedback from the employees with regards to the mission and vision statements. And I failed to mention with regards to the focus groups and all those partners and the officers and other board of delegates, individuals, we got some really good feedback as well around the mission and vision statements. So you can see the 2 statements. that are in front of you here, and they do again reflect the feedback that we received. For the mission statement, that really is the why of the organization. So why does the COG exist? And you will see as you read throughout that there's a lot of buzzwords and things that are kind of really reflective of the purpose of the organization. So you see member driven as a specific word in there. We wanted to be really intentional in putting leading in there. This whole notion around connecting communities, because we know that business is not necessarily done in silos. As well as focusing on enhancing member organizations' strategic priorities outcomes through regional policy, collaboration, and technical assistance. And then we also broadened it out to be beyond just local and state, but also a mention of the region. With regards to the vision statement, that is more of a forward look. So if we were to say 10 years from now, what should the COG be? Or what should it look like? We'd basically be able to say the COG is a premier regional organization that addresses the needs of the members. And so we know by using the word address, it's an active form of the word in terms of meeting those needs. And then leading work focused on essentially those four things that you see there on the tail end. So comprehensive, innovative, timely, and reliable solutions for the region. So those were the two revised statements, the mission statement and vision statement. That's kind of the top line of the plan. And then on the next slide, you'll see the organizational principles. And Lee made mention of these principles earlier when he was going over the budget. Believe on my side, the slide looks a little distorted, but the first through the third organizational principles, basically the ones that were there before. So before we started all the planning work, so service to members, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then data-driven decision-making. And then as part of the conversations that we had with employees, as well as through the focus groups, two things emerged. Again, Lee had mentioned this earlier around thought leadership and service alignment. So while we know certain parts of the org structure have to be in silos, we do want to make some decisions or be able to keep in mind that there may be one program area that is really heavily dependent on another. So how do we align those services across those program areas to be effective and efficient? And then on the next slide, you will see the core values. So core values did not change. These were values that were approved, I believe, by the board before the engagement work started on the strategic on developing the strategic framework. So the first two here, integrity and trustworthiness and excellent customer service. And then on the next slide are the other two, well-informed leadership and solutions and results. And so because those core values had been modified, we didn't want to overhaul those core values. And just for clarity, the organizational principles are kind of what we would want the organization to be about from a holistic standpoint versus the core values are more at the individual and the employee level. And then lastly, on the next slide, as I'd mentioned, we talked about the focus areas. So we got really good feedback, went round and round with regards to word choices, but it eventually landed with what you were able to read about. So I'm not going to go in depth, but the aging and human services focus area pretty much stayed the same. There was some addition of some language in there with regards to that second sentence that says the Triangle J Council of Governments Area Aging, Agency on Aging administers, so on and so forth. Community and economic development was probably the focus area that remained most intact. And then environment and resilience used to be natural resources and resilience, but because of the focus on climate and what happens if things are kind of beyond natural resources, right? Do we really want to embrace that? And the answer was yes. So the word choice there was to use environment, natural resources. And then on the next slide are the other three. So housing pretty much remained intact, but one of the things that was decided as part of the work was to kind of give a little more color commentary around what do we mean with regards to housing and recognizing that homelessness across the nation and this at risk of being homelessness is a big issue. There was some additional language that was added as part of this description, and that's basically focusing on regional housing approach that embraces the continuum of housing needs ranging from homelessness to home ownership. So we thought that would be a little more lay friendly, probably a little more well received by communities that are in the Triangle area. And then member support and strategy is completely new as it relates to the combination of two former focus areas. And those two former focus areas were strategy and innovation as one, and then technical assistance as another one. So the discussion was around technical assistance may not be necessarily clear to individuals that are not familiar with the TJ cog. Therefore, is there a way to make it more clear? So after a lot of discussion, we said, well, why don't we just collapse those two focus areas into this one large one that is kind of more raising it up a little bit and focusing on member support and strategy. So that was the work there. And that was probably the most structural change to the set of focus areas. And then the last one is mobility and transportation. And that one used to just be transportation, but because of this whole notion around how do people move, especially the aging population and other individuals that maybe want to walk, a walk friendly environment or a bicycle friendly environment, this whole thing around mobility kind of came up. So we decided to expand that from just transportation to mobility and transportation. So hopefully, based on all the feedback from many of you that are on the call, we were able to get a pretty good strategic framework in place for you for your approval for tonight. And like I said, after tonight, we will be kind of taking that next phase, which is on the post-planning side and building out the remainder of the strategic plan. So that concludes my comments, Chair Ferguson, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the hard work and the diligence that everyone has accorded to this project, your time, your interest, your contributions. Are there any comments or questions? On the phone? All right, then we will move to Mayor Raines. And my time in this seat is rapidly coming to a close. So Mayor Raines, what recommends our nominating committee?
Well, as the previous chair, it is my honor to chair the nominating committee, and nominating committee has a big task, and we're glad that we accomplished that task. But I know Mark Wilson is on the on our virtual. Mark, if you're still there, just want to thank you for serving on the executive committee and recognizing that you felt you could not serve as chairman because of some health issues. We're wishing you well, and we're just glad to see you. So I want to have a round of applause for Mark.
If I may, Mark, I hope you don't mind, but in an earlier conversation I had with Mark, that when it's his discretion, but he has in years past shared his poetry, his writings with this group, particularly around Veterans Days and days of import. And he has generously consented to continue sharing that as his health and energy and desire is there. And I just personally want to thank you, Mark, because your contribution to this organization is necessary, it's needed, and no one can replace you.
Well, I thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I would humbly accept the offer to share a little bit of my poetry or words as they are at any time that would seem to keep me involved. I do not want to leave TJ Cog, I do not. And as long as I'm able, I will be here. I will be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being a friend.
Thank you.
So the nominating committee, the second vice chairman was Deandra Freeman, and she accepts the position as chair if the nominating committee moves up. First vice chairman now will be Ken Marshman from Garner. Deandra Freeman is from the city of Durham. Kirk Smith is with us tonight. He's a county commissioner from Lee County, chair of the county commissioners, I believe. Is that correct? And he is accepted for second vice chairman. And secretary treasurer is Wilma Laney from Aberdeen, which is in Moore County. So all the officers are from various parts of Triangle J district. And they represent what I think is good leadership for Triangle J. And this is the recommended position of the nominating committee. There was at least 7 or 8 people that are former chairs or elect or certain people that were on the nominating committee. And this was direction that they wanted to move. If once Mark Wilson felt like he could not be chair. So this is our recommendation.
Thank you. And thank you to the nominating committee. There was a lot of work and discussion. We appreciate the diligence, and to all of our nominated officers, thank you for your service. We look forward to the future, and we'll be able to handle that in our consent agenda.
I think if I may suggest,
Yes.
it's up to the chair, but since this is the nominating committee report and there's an opportunity for nominations for the floor, I'd recommend a separate vote for this item. I know it has to be a roll call, but this one probably ought to be a separate vote.
That
If
works.
it's the chair's desire.
I am all for participation, and I certainly do not want to miss anyone who may have an interest and who has willingness and desire to serve. So are there any other nominations? Including on the phone? Hearing none, I will continue this and can we not just have this part of the consent agenda?
If there've been no nominations, if you want to put it on the consent, that it's your.
I wish to add that to the consent agenda so that we have it's a more streamlined meeting. Cool. Speaking of which, the consent agenda is before you. I'm assuming everyone has had a chance to take a look. Does anyone wish to pull an item from the consent agenda for discussion?
Madam Chair, I don't wish to pull a particular item, but I would like to I have a prepared statement.
Yes.
And then I will transfer it over to electronically to, okay.
Thank you.
Chantel. First, you need to know my background. I spent 20 years, 9 months and 12 days serving the nation in the United States Army. I'm a combat veteran of the Gulf War, participating in the three country combat tour of Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Kuwait. For 6 years, my family and I, lived and served in the Federal Republic of Germany. We spent 3 of those years patrolling the communist East German border and preparing for our NATO mission of defending the West from a potential Soviet invasion. How times have changed. My second tour allowed me, as well as my family, the opportunity to travel through East Germany to Berlin and into communist East Berlin. We also had an 8-day visit to Moscow, the capital of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. I hold a bachelor's degree in history from the University of Maryland, focused on modern European history with a heavy emphasis on Nazism, fascism, and communism. I also hold a master's degree in history from the University of Rhode Island with a heavy emphasis on American colonial, revolutionary, and post-revolutionary history. Today, our country endures a divisive and disparaging and deceitful movement called critical race theory. The Marxist theology of critical theory divides groups based on an oppressor and the oppressed, solely utilizing class envy, class warfare, pitting the working class against the bourgeois, starting in the 1970s with Professor Derek Bell Jr., who took Marxist critical theory, evolving it into critical race theory, where the advantaged oppressors dominate over the disadvantaged oppressed solely based on one's skin color. The vehicle promoting critical race theory in all facets of our society is diversity, inclusion, and equity. And it is deeply rooted in Marxism. It is divisive and designed to foment class and racial animosity, solely based on Marxist critical theory. Knowing that this ideology comes from our institutions of higher indoctrination, otherwise known as our colleges and universities, one should not be surprised that it has infiltrated our schools, social media, governments, and corporate boardrooms. Diversity, inclusion, and equity is designed to divide and create a groupthink mentality of us against them. It is toxic to the foundational values of our country. Our country's founding document states, and I quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness," unquote. Clinical psychologist and professor Jordan Peterson commented, and I quote, "Diversity is defined not by opinion, but by race, ethnicity, or sexual identity. Equity is no longer the laudable goal of equality of opportunity, but the insistence on equality of outcome. Inclusion is the use of identity-based quotas to attain this misconceived state of equity," unquote. In a recent report commissioned by the Tennessee legislature on critical social justice in Tennessee higher education, an overview by Arthur Millick, Anna Miller, and Susan Kastner. In that report, they quote the famous critical race theorist, Ibram X. Kendi, quote, "The only remedy for present discrimination is future discrimination," unquote. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is the present and future discrimination. Diversity, they write, used to mean differences in or plurals, but not anymore. Diversity means more members of victim groups and fewer members of the supposedly oppressive groups. When men make up 80% of the engineering students, that is a lack of diversity that must be remedied. When women make up more than 80% of elementary education majors, that is diversity that should be celebrated. And in curriculum, diversity means replacing books written by white males with authors from historically underrepresented groups. The achievement of diversity requires retribution to be taken against former oppressors. It requires that aggrieved minorities be held to lower standards.
Excuse me, can I ask how this is germane to our agenda?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. The formerly marginalized get privileged and the formerly privileged get marginalized.
Chair, I believe we should stop this conversation.
My question is, how long?
I got one more. Be right quick.
Okay, I am willing to, out of respect, to let you finish your statement.
Thank you.
I am going to interject. This was unexpected, and I think this should have been handled in a different way, and we can handle that offline.
I'm going to continue. Thank you. Equity used to mean fairness before the law, but not anymore. Equity stands for the idea that universities must aim at something like statistical group parity. For example, since Blacks make up 13% of the population, they should be 13% of the engineers. Failure to achieve parity is sufficient evidence of systemic discrimination. Therefore, we must dismantle the old culture, no matter how well it seemed to work, and build a new one that will achieve parity. In short, equity is equal group outcomes. Inclusion used to mean everyone was welcome, but not anymore. Today's inclusion demands an institutional climate that elevates and supports the well-being of aggrieved minorities instead of the expense of the supposedly privileged. Sometimes that means special tutoring for their supposedly unique needs, like a women's center, or excluding ideas and symbols that some members of the underrepresented groups find objectionable, like thin blue line flags. LGBT or Blacks only graduations are organized in the name of inclusion. Speech codes and safe spaces arise in order to accomplish this new inclusion. In short, inclusion means excluding all that makes allegedly aggrieved minorities uncomfortable. The ideas behind DEI require people to believe that America is on an endless treadmill of oppression and victimhood. Accordingly, all efforts to transcend group identity are thought to be lies that rationalize privilege.
I'm going to ask again for a point of order. I really don't, we should be allowing this discussion to continue.
The reason why I'm asked, just to point, I am, because part of,
All right, I'll move right to my point.
thank you.
Today, the Lee County Board of Commissioners have sitting on the board 3 Cold War veterans, and recently we voted to exclude the diversity, inclusion, and equity recommendations from our strategic plan. I strongly oppose the incorporation of diversity, inclusion, and equity in the Triangle J Council of Governments budget and strategic plan. Madam Chair, I move to strike from the Triangle J Council of Governments 2022-2023 budget and strategic plan any and all references to diversity, inclusion, and equity.
I hear there is a motion.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe it is appropriate if there is something to be shared. Absolutely. To have a extended opinion piece that much of that is, in my opinion, not relevant. I think I would have liked to have had that conversation where we could have had a framed conversation that would be useful for the group. There is a motion. Is there a second?
Thank you. I'd like to have this incorporated in the minutes.
I do not hear a motion. So it is declined. And our strategic plan, our budget remains as intact and as part of our consent agenda. Are there any other comments? Any other items that people wish to remove from the consent agenda? All right, then. So the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Susan Evans.
Second, Mark Wilson.
Yes.
Just a reminder for the board, not everything on there. There's the addition of the vote of the officers on the consent agenda,
Yes.
just to remind the board.
Yes.
All right, I will restate my motion that I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
All right, and Mark, is your second stand?
Yes, I will approve. I also approve the amendment.
Is there any further discussion? All right, Chantel, if we could have our roll call vote, please.
Aberdeen,
Wilma Laney votes aye.
Anger, Apex,
Brett Gant votes aye.
Archer Lodge,
Mark Wilson, aye.
Benson,
Aye.
Broadway,
Broadway, aye.
Cameron, Carborough, Carthage, Cary, Chapel Hill, Chatham County,
Aye.
Clayton,
Clayton is aye.
City of Durham. Durham County.
Carter, I.
Newquay Arena. Hillsborough.
Hillsborough, Kathleen Ferguson, I.
Holly Springs. Johnson County. Kenley. Idell. Lee County.
Kurt Smith, no.
Micro. Moore County. Morrisville. Orange County.
Bedford, I.
Pine Level. Pinehurst. Hillsborough. Princeton.
Aye.
Raleigh. Robbins. Roseville. Sanford. Selma.
Amy Whitley, I.
Siler City.
Siler City votes aye.
Smithville. Southern Pines. Mass. Wake County.
I.
Wake Forest. Wendell.
Wendell votes aye.
Wilson's Mills.
Wilson's Mills votes aye.
Is there anyone I may have missed?
Actually, this is Jeff Morgan in Pinehurst. I'm having trouble with my internet and it just died on me as I was doing. Pinehurst votes aye.
Thank you. Anyone else I may have missed?
It's simple majority. So it's 16. So
Yeah, we're, yeah, we passed.
yeah,
Good.
16-1. Right.
For those on the phones, can y'all hear? So the motion passes 16 ayes, 1 nay. That's not my phone, is it?
It's
I think on the computer.
Oh, okay. All right, then. With that, we're going to move to the executive director's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, just a few things I wanted to share with you about regarding some of the great work that our staff continues to do so that you are aware of what's going on and what we've been up to. So on the, I can't say technical assistance anymore, the member support side, we are helping Carthage with their town manager search. We are received some really good applications and working with their board to do interviews on the 6th and the 10th of June. Their manager really was retired when he went to Carthage and has stayed there many years and done a wonderful job, but he's ready now to to play a lot more golf. So he's going to be retiring full time. We have completed the manager search in Kenley. Their new manager, Ms. Justine Jones, will start, I think, the 2nd of June, I believe. So we have wrapped that up. We have just wrapped up helping Sanford, their board with their strategic plan. We are getting ready to wrap up a strategic plan for the town of Wilson's Mills. And we are engaging many of our elected officials and partner organizations around the possibility of a connected region, regional vision. Chair Ferguson was part of that conversation a couple weeks ago, but talking a lot about a vision for the region, especially around transportation and housing. But of course, land use is a critical part of that as well. So having more discussion about that. And then very excited to share that we have been awarded 2 brownfields, US EPA brownfields grants or opportunities. One is an assessment grant of, I think, Lindsay, 600,000. Is the assessment 500,000. And that was a partnership, Wake Forest and
Fuquay Varina.
Worked together on that through our consortium. And we actually received the highest score in the Atlanta region on that grant application. So great work, Lindsay, and the folks that work with her. And then we also are participating in a joint opportunity with the Piedmont Triad Regional Council, which is the Greensboro and Winston-Salem, and a COG outside the state, right? Lindsay, is that what COG is that?
Yeah, and I'm trying to Google their name. I never can remember it.
It's in Virginia.
Yeah, it's like.
Is it the Danville area? No?
I don't think so.
All right, well, it's a COG up in Virginia, but they were awarded a $1 million revolving loan fund around EPA.
It's
So
West Piedmont Planning District Commission.
there you go.
That's why I can never remember it.
So some really cool wins, which we're excited about. So great work. And so, yeah, got a great staff. So proud of what they're doing. So.
And what's that, what's the loan fund? What is that actually?
It revolves.
Well, I figured that.
Cleanup projects. So
yeah.
They can be used to clean up the brownfield investment or brownfield projects, those that are already done the assessment portion.
Yep. So
And so the folks who get it, they pay back in?
Yeah, the developers, they are kind of like serving as the match and paying back into.
Got it. That's what I was trying to, it's like, I didn't think like our municipalities would, so I was.
Yeah, and EPA is like really trying to get away from issuing those to just like one city or county or even region. So they really liked the tri-cog approach, so.
Very cool.
And so we'll be talking more. There's some more opportunities around brownfields and other areas. We had a really good conversation with the managers in Moore County talking about brownfields. And so there's more money out there to assist our local governments. And we were encouraged by the regional office, because our application was so stellar, to go after more money. So we're going to do it. We're going to try to. Try not to let Lindsay run off, but and the others. So that's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. For chair report, we do have forum meeting coming up with Mr. Raines. And we have our legislative day that is coming up. Also, one of the things that incoming chair Freeman and I have discussed with our executive director and with Jenny Halsey is creating a committee to really look at evaluations, a robust evaluation developmental plan for Lee to make the very best use of his years and for in future years. So his evaluation is more meaningful for him on identifying stretch targets and where we as a board can give more effective feedback. So it'll help him develop, and it also helps him model what he has been working with staff this whole time. So more consistency, and it'll give us a foundation that, God forbid, when Lee leaves us, which I will tether him to the cog no matter what, but when that day comes, that any incoming executive director, we will have a much better structure to evaluate performance, to communicate expectations, and for that continual improvement. So that is in discussion, and wanted to let you guys know about that. From there, that's it for me. Well, around the region, and oh my goodness, we're actually ahead of time.
Yeah, we're at 7:35.
Oh, I think this is 3 meetings in a row I've been able to do this.
a great chair.
But for around the region, it's I want to hear, is anyone else having budget issues the way we are? I don't know, misery loves company, but we're really struggling with our budget. Our audit is not in yet. That has been a nightmare. And we're looking at 63, 68 million CapEx expenses, needless to say, not all this year, but really struggling with infrastructure needs, and we always have a 3-year budget and a 10-year, and I just want to hear what other folks are facing. So I'm going to suggest we go around the room, and then when Chantel comes back, we'll get folks on the phone because I can't see.
The question is
And if she doesn't step back, I can.
Oh, excellent. So the question is what are y'all, what's your budget picture look like?
okay. Breck and Apex. Our budget, we don't have, we're like 20 years in a row gotten awards for our budget. So things are going pretty well that way. I'm sorry that you had that problem. Maybe the biggest thing is we're having to, we did a reorg, kind of like what's been talked about today a little bit, and required a lot of new employees to kind of fill certain roles that we were created. So it's less capital, more employees this year.
All right.
We're had problems recruiting policemen, and we did a amendment to our budget of about a 15% increase in law enforcement's salary. And in our budget process, we're going to have about 8% increase in all other departments, basically to stabilize employment. With that, it looks like we'll have a balanced budget without going into fund balance, no tax increase. And we're seeing significant growth in property taxes, and that will contribute to the quality of life for all aspects. We're looking at building a community building with some assistance from the General Assembly and from the county, which will add to the quality of life. And based on resiliency, we just received a grant from the Soil and Water Conservation from the Stream Flow Rehab Assistance Program for $257,000 to clean one of the creeks that go through town downstream, so that when we do have rainstorms, that the water will flow faster downstream. So we're using all our resources to make a better community.
Cool.
We're wrapping up our budget. We have a $91 million budget this year. We're reducing taxes by 3.5 cents. We're planning on placing a large sum of money off to the side for our sports complex that's coming forward. We're building a new library and meeting room for our commission. And things are just constantly growing in Lee County.
All right, so we need help on the,
I'm prepared to help.
thank you.
You want me to just go down?
If you would, please.
I will be glad to, Madam Chair. Mr. Wilson, you were first, sir.
Thank you. I would like to take just a few minutes to say I appreciate each and every one of you for your contributions, not only to TJCOG, but for your kindness and support of me. I was looking forward to sitting in the chair. However, the good Lord has other plans for me. And although I'm in failing health with Parkinson's, I spent 7 weeks in the end of February, not 7 weeks, I'm sorry, 3 weeks, the end of February, beginning of March in the hospital. Quite unexpected. I didn't know who I was, where I was, or anything. My wife took me. Thank heaven she did. I had 2 operations. The second one, unfortunately, it was a success, but I developed sepsis and a bacterial infection in my bloodstream. And almost had to say goodbye. But I'm here today through the help of my wife, who is my caregiver. And all my friends at the call. I don't want to leave the call, even if I just step back and be a member of the board of delegates. That would be good for me, and I appreciate you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate all of your contribution you've made, and we appreciate the contribution you will make in the future.
Can I just add one more thing?
Yes, you may.
I am one small person in the cog. Each one of us is a spoke in a big wheel of a big service-oriented organization.
Thank you. Lee, next.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Next is Ms. West Whitley from Selma.
Good evening. Our budget, we're moving right along. It's not been approved, but we're really focusing on safety and fire. And that's about it.
All right, thank you. Mr. Haggis, Siler City.
Yes, thank you. So our big budget challenge was the fact that our town manager submitted his resignation right in the middle of the budget process. So that was fun. So we had an interim town manager to be fair, when Roy submitted his resignation, he had already started the budget process, but it was still quite an effort, and our interim town manager ended up sitting in and finalizing it for us. And then while we were in the process of searching for a new town manager, which I'm pleased to say we did hire and swore in last Monday night. So we actually had our public hearing for the budget. We had our vote approved the budget, and so it went as smoothly as you could in that kind of a situation, but it's not something I would want to do again.
Wow.
Yeah, all the fun. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Haggis. Next is Ms. Bedford, Orange County.
Oh, I don't have a lot to report. We have another work session tomorrow. We're having a lot of positions that are vacant at the Sheriff's Department, Child Protective Services. But we will, for the first time in 2 years, be able to offer salary increases to employees, which is a big change for us. And all's good. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next is Ms. Hogeman from Pinehurst. Ms. Hogeman, if you're speaking, you're still muted, I think.
No, hi. Our budget has been actually very successful is not the word I want to use, but what we've experienced is that the revenue sources that we were concerned might drop have not dropped as much as we thought. And so we have been able to put together a budget that covers the programs that we want to prioritize without raising taxes. And that has been really a remarkable thing, given, the COVID and all the circumstances. So we do feel very fortunate about that.
Thank you, Ms. Hogeman. It took me a minute here to figure out how to unmute the dial-in. I've had some difficulties. This is Jeff Morgan. I'm Pinehurst. I represent Pinehurst. But I concur with what Ms. Hogan had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate both of you. Mr. Thompson Clayton.
Yes, sir. Good evening. And Madam Chair, good evening. Budget's going well for Clayton. Our biggest challenges are adding employees, as our being the fastest growing town and the fastest growing county, one of the fastest growing counties. It's having to keep up with, we've traditionally never added but just a handful of employees each year, and now we're having to add in the more than, in the double digits of employees every year. So that's been a big challenge for us. And the other is infrastructure. We have a huge wastewater treatment plant project, and, we secure the funding, get the approval from the LGC, and then they come up and say, well, the cost is going up by 50 million, so it's not that the price isn't going up by just a little bit. So, every time you think you've got everything wrapped up, is, they say it's the cost of materials, getting the materials, all of those things keep rising. And as soon as you go through all of the necessary hoops to secure funding for something and move forward, it seems like the price continues to go up. So that's been a challenge for us. But thankfully, we've got some legislators that are working with us to help us navigate through a lot of that process. But like I said, it's employee heavy. It's, this is a public safety critical function type of budget year. We don't have a lot of extra frills in the budget this year. It's really public safety heavy and infrastructure heavy. Thank you. And I do want to, while I have the floor, acknowledge our good neighbor, Mr. Mark Wilson, and our neighboring town, Wilson, over in Archer Lodge. We're in Clayton. He's in Archer Lodge right next door. And he's just always been one of the greatest neighbors and a good public servant to look up to as our towns adjoin each other. It's always been a pleasure to serve alongside him as a neighbor, and to see him tonight and be able to hear him speak tonight is a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Deloach, Wendell.
Good evening. Thank you. As far as the budget goes, we passed ours this past Monday night, so we're excited about that. Much like the budget presentation from earlier tonight, We invested in our people first as well. Salary benefit, workplace improvements.
Oops. Thought he was thinking.
We're adding additional, so there you have it. But quite a few capital projects. We got design, construction, improvements of our current facilities, sidewalks, wastewater, et cetera. So lots going on from our strategic plan. We're excited about that. We've maintained a solid fund budget, and we did not increase taxes. So we're excited about that. I do want to mention real quick, if you don't mind, tonight we're actually, there's a meeting of the newly formed Eastern Wake County Local Government Association. So you probably noticed that nobody from Zebulon, Knightdale, Roseville were here tonight. Zebulon, Wendell, Knightdale, and Roseville town boards are meeting. We're planning on doing this 2 to 4 times a year, and we're going to discuss just kind of the upcoming issues that Eastern Wake County is facing as we continue to grow. So, and I will mention also that Wendell recently unanimously agreed to join the Wake County non-discrimination ordinance. So that was something that we're excited about as well. Thank you, Madam Chair. Everybody have a good night. Hope you're able to hear me. My service is a little shaky.
I do have a question because I find it, hearing that the governments are meeting on the same night as the COG, that raises a flag for me. So maybe a conversation offline.
Absolutely. I'll make sure that that's different. I was actually not planning on being at that meeting tonight. I'm dialing in remote. So after I got my agenda for our meeting and the agenda for the other meeting, that's when it hit me. So I'll make sure that we do a little better job of planning on that.
Appreciate it.
No problem. 2 to 4 times a year, and we'll avoid COG nights.
Cool beans.
Thank you, sir. Let's see, Commissioner Evans, Wake County.
Okay, I'm here. Sorry. So we are about to wrap up our budget process, had a lengthy work session on Monday. As has been mentioned by several others, our biggest issue this year is around recruiting and retaining personnel. We've had 16% turnover in county employees this past year. That's the highest in decades. And this comes at a time when, we're still growing tremendously. And so the demand for our services is quite high. So we are having to invest in cost of living adjustments as well as market rate adjustments for our employees and incorporate some new merit pay incentives and so forth. And certain departments we're really struggling, public safety being one of those. It was mentioned by someone else, in particular our emergency management, EMS services. We had to approve an increase in pay for emergency management services in mid-year. And we have started attracting some more applicants, but that's still a challenge. So the long and short of it is we're doing a little bit of program expansion, but a large part of our budget expansion this year is just to try to attract and hold on to employees. And, I know y'all think, well, gosh, if Wake County can't do it, who can? But, what we've got going on here is a very robust economic environment, which is a good thing. But it pulls people away from working for the county to going into private industry. So I'm sorry to say that we probably are looking at a tax rate increase this year, and we're not happy about that because of it being inflationary times. It will be the first time we've had to increase our tax rate in 4 years, but nonetheless, it looks like we're going to have to do that. We've got to add 35 new EMS technicians alone. And altogether, there's a couple of hundred positions we need to fill. So anyway, that's a snapshot from where we are. And it's good and bad, but growth doesn't always pay for itself. Thanks.
No, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Laney from Aberdeen.
This is Wilma. We were able to balance our budget on Monday, no tax increase. And so far we're doing well, I think. And we did have some challenges with staff, just like I guess everybody, but we seem to have gotten a handle on it. And we were able to do 6% COLA for the employees. So we're actually doing well. And whatever challenges we're going to face as far as employees, because I think everybody is having that problem. We're trying to get around it, and it is getting better, that part of it.
Thank you, ma'am. I want to recognize one other person, and she doesn't have to give a report, but we actually have Megan Hinkle joining us from the city of Raleigh. And Megan sent me a really nice email this afternoon, well, to Chantel and I. They have done some reappointments and excited about the Raleigh City Council member that will be on the board of delegates. And Megan said that either she or the new delegate would join. And I see Megan on the participant list. So just wanted to say hi. And we're glad you're part of the meeting, Megan. And looking forward to seeing the Raleigh delegate at meetings in the near future.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yes, we definitely, just as we mentioned about East Wake, want to make sure that Raleigh is participating and contributing. We have as much to learn from you as you have from us. So, all right then. Have we gone?
That's all now.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Is there any other business on the phone? All right.
This is
then.
Jeff Moore. Are
So-
we going to go through each individual representation here to talk about stuff, or you want business now?
I must have missed Jeff. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry, Jeff. We
ahead.
don't, please go ahead. Don't want to miss you at all.
Well, are we going to go through the counties now to talk about other things other than the budget, or do you want to talk about other things?
Around the region, I wanted to hear what everyone's, budget situation was. If we've missed anyone, I want to make sure we got everything. And if there's any other business before this body, please do bring it up.
One thing just for Pinehurst, we've had an editorial recently in our paper talking about the rise of the regions innovating for strong economies and environments. And certainly collaboration of state and local governments on there. And the purpose, I understand, is to look for ways to lessen the impact of extreme weather, dams, bridges, roads, different areas are susceptible to flooding and issues like that. And wanted to know, we have a stormwater management master plan and didn't know if that could possibly incorporate with this. And if it's a possibility, we'd certainly like to be able to contact our village staff to work with TJ Cog on this moving forward. So I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring this up, or if you want me to wait until a little later on this.
So,
no, please do.
Yeah, Mr. Morgan, I'll be happy to connect you with Emily Barrett on our staff. Emily is our Environment Resiliency Program Manager, and let's definitely have a conversation. We're happy to assist or provide any information that we can.
I appreciate that, and happy to work with you on that. A couple other things just in there. I apologize for I've had spotty reception here for whatever reason. I don't know why, but I had to come off the Zoom and went to the dial-in. I was unable to figure out the unmute situation. But I apologize to the group for that interference. Second thing on there, just like to discuss is that bring up. There are some of us on the call that are employees of the United States government, and through this Hatch Act, one of the things that's very important here is that we maintain a municipal approach to things and refrain from partisan things. And so I would appreciate if we could maintain that municipal approach on different things versus anything that goes partisan. The last thing I'll just mention on here from a personal side is that I have served just shy of 30 years in the military. I've been to 3 wars, and I personally would hope that folks will not use their military service as a platform to build credibility for partisan comments, especially when it's a municipal thing. I think it brings discredit to others who have served, and you're welcome to put that in the minutes. But I do appreciate the representation here, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. And I think you brought up a very important point of this is a nonpartisan body. And we do need to, if we have objections, yes, we must make them in the appropriate time, in the appropriate manner, but we do need to avoid ideological stances. Anything else before this body?
Nothing from Pinehurst. Thank you.
All right, then it is, well, we will be a few minutes early.
It's 8 o'clock.
I said, but I will entertain a motion to adjourn unless you guys really want to stretch it out. But come on, we're now on a roll. You mean
Jason
there's-
Thompson, I'll move to adjourn.
There you go. I was like, no kid. Hallelujah. Pass the salt. This meeting is adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Drive safe.
That was truly
That bug was
crazy.
waiting 2 years to hop
I
on you.
know. You handled that well. Did everyone see the cockroach falling? Where did it fall on your leg?
Well, something happened to y'all two when you left.
No, thankfully no cockroach.
Ah.
Yeah, from the ceiling. On him.
I thought I saw something like.
That was